Hi, everyone. My name is Zoe. I am the community and youth organizer for Women Engaged, and welcome back to YAWA. This is like a special episode, and we're going to be discussing the overturning of Roe v. Wade and actually recently the Georgia 6-week abortion ban and what that means. But in the meantime, before we get into all the juicy stuff, please drop in the chat where you're located and how your day's going. I know for me, I'm in Douglasville, Georgia, and it's thundering like heck outside. I literally have all my electronics charging at this moment. So if everything goes out of power, I can at least still play computer games. So that's literally what I'm doing. But go ahead and drop in the chat where you're located and actually where you're located and what's one place you'd rather be today that's not in this stormy, gloomy weather. I know for me, I want to be in the Bahamas or like on an island if it's not thundering or storming there. I want a beach. I don't want to hear this thundering and lightning. I do not want my electricity go out. So that's where I'd rather be. And yeah, just drop in the chat where you're located and one place you'd rather be. And in the meantime, I'm gonna do like a quick introduction. So basically, like I said, hi, my name is Zoe. I am the community and youth organizer here at Women Engaged. And some a bit of organizational updates. We're still looking for volunteers. So if you're interested, please visit our website, www.womenengaged.org. And also through this website, you can register to vote and check your voter registration. And you can also apply for 4 positions that we are currently looking for: the Senior Manager Movement Building position, Digital Communications Specialist, Executive Assistant, and Voter Engagement Database Coordinator. NRG Consulting Group is taking the lead on this search. So if you have any questions or concerns, you can reach out to them directly. Their email is jobs@nrgconsultinggroup.org. Like I said, you can reach out to them directly. They're leading the search on this. And so, yeah, if you're interested, please check that out. And just to reiterate, our website is www.womenengaged.org. So for today, we are bringing up our If, When, How Reproductive Justice Legal Fellow Kai and Michelle, our COO, and we're going to talk about everything that's happened yesterday. And it's a lot. I definitely, before the show started, I had a lot of questions, and I was like, let me wait until we actually start filming. So yeah, how are you guys feeling today?
I'm all right. I'm here. I'm a little tired.
Felt that? Yes.
Yeah, I'm doing well. Just trying to stay caught up on everything. Things move pretty quickly.
Yes. They definitely do. I guess really, just to really kick it off, what happened yesterday? Like, what was that? Anyone
Well,
can kick it off.
like I can start. So, well, we knew this was going to happen. So let's just recap what's going on. There was an abortion ban that did pass in 2019 that was signed into law by Governor Kemp. It was an injunction was filed, which basically put that on pause because using the arguments that this infringes upon the rights that were protected via Roe v. Wade. Now, with the overturning of Roe v. Wade, they essentially were like, let's not have an injunction on it because the argument's no longer relevant because we overturned Roe v. Wade. So they did some litigation on that last week, and the ruling came out yesterday that they're going to have it in place. Now, typically with stuff like this, there's usually like a mandate that comes out and there's like 28 days to comply. But they were like, actually, we're just going to make it immediate. So like within like 2 hours of like the initial ruling of like allowing it to come into effect, instead of giving the 28-day mandate, they were just like, it's effective like now. So clinics like Feminist Women's Health Center had to start making calls to people who had appointments scheduled for today, who could no longer, get care here in Georgia because it's beyond the 6 weeks or when fetal cardiac activity is recorded. So that's what happened yesterday.
Oh, go ahead, Kai.
No, I was just saying, Michelle covered it, and that's something, that is just very real, that, like what Michelle said, like clinics had to call and reach out to folks, and knowing that might look like some people may be able to figure out how to get out of the state, but that some folks will be forced to, go without that reproductive care and that just health care that they need.
Yeah. I have two questions, but I want to follow up with, like, what does this bill say specifically? And what does it not say specifically?
So I'm a little rusty. So just bear with me. And if folks want to fact check me, please do. I definitely encourage it. But this bill essentially bans abortion at 6 weeks, roughly. It's when a fetal cardiac activity is developed, or what people are calling a heartbeat, even though science will tell you there's no heart to beat at that level. But that's one part of the bill. The bill argues with science and tries to say that these things are there. The other part about the bill is that it does declare fetal personhood. So this embryo is now a person in the eyes of the law, which has other implications towards like code and taxes and stuff like that. That's like very deeply on it. I believe that in this bill, like you can get abortion care in the event of sexual assault, but you have to file a report first in order to do that, which again, not disproportionate, but like negatively impacts survivors, and the ability, especially when we talk about the statistics of folks who actually report sexual violence, and things like that. So that's also a provision that's in the bill as well. But it does a lot and also not much at the same time, in the sense that like a lot of the stuff is very vague. So it's kind of hard for folks to figure out like what exactly is going on, to be honest, or exactly like how this is going to continue to impact our communities.
Yeah, I just want to just like emphasize that personhood clause. Just the piece about like this is the first of its kind in anywhere in the country to be upheld in a state legislature. And like Michelle said, personhood clauses define embryos and fetuses at any stage of pregnancy as natural persons. And so this legislation in Georgia single-handedly redefines natural person. In every other place natural person appears in the law in Georgia code. So this single piece of legislation has completely upended like what a natural person is and what family law, criminal law, what tax code considers a natural person to be. So, like Michelle said, this redefinition affects like every like way of life that we interact and we touch and go with here in Georgia. And we'll have to continue to like watch that space and see how that progresses, because this is just like, it just has changed the landscape of like so many different ways that we just live our lives like in this state. So that's just another, reason why, we've been saying and we'll continue to say that reproductive justice and abortion is not just about abortion. It never is.
Yeah, no, that's real. Thank you. We need to clip that because that's real, And I'm trying to frame this question correctly. But I know some people may say, well, at least we still have it. So I would like for someone to stay on like why this will negatively impact people having it at 6 weeks.
Well, no one really knows that they're pregnant at 6 weeks. Like,
Yeah.
I think that's the thing about it. Like, 6 weeks really isn't that long amount of time enough for people to really understand if they're pregnant or not. I mean, especially like when we start thinking about like menstrual cycles and if that's like an indicator, and knowing that like a number of people also have like irregular cycles that like don't function like, the same day every month kind of thing. That it really narrows the window and the ability for people to like, know if they're pregnant so they can actually make those kind of decisions. So that's why while it says like, oh, you can have it up to 6 weeks, it's almost like a virtual like ban on abortion because of that. Now you can still get access to treatment if you can catch it earlier than 6 weeks, but that calls for like a level of like hypervigilance that like honestly some folks may not be able to afford. I mean, like I'm thinking about like the amount of like pregnancy tests that people would need to have, the amount of like disposable income that you need to have to be that hyper focused on understanding if you're pregnant or not is really difficult. So that's kind of that's my answer to that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like I've been, maybe this won't be the whole talk. I feel like I've been like tagging, like, when Michelle says something, it makes me think about something. But yeah, everything Michelle, you just said, absolutely right. I don't say it's right, but like absolutely agree with. And then you made me think about why that question. So I thought that question was so interesting because, again, abortion is never just about abortion. So people say, oh, 6 weeks, we still have it. We still have something. But, like what is it? Because again, abortion is never like just about abortion. There's like comprehensive reproductive health care means emergency medical care. Michelle said like this bill outlines like being able to access this care in the case of sexual assault, but you have to file a police report, you have to take these other steps. But what about, like emergency situations, right, that do not present themselves for weeks, after 6 weeks? We've already seen in other places across the country where physicians are refusing care for fear of criminalization, losing their licenses, not being able to provide care to their other patients, because someone needs emergency medical care and they are looking at, the field and the law, as it stands. And so there will be physicians in Georgia that will have to like navigate this and navigate being criminalized themselves for just acting in situations where they would have acted in the past and not thought twice about it to, save lives, to, protect someone's health. There also is like personhood clauses restricting folks who have issues with fertility and how many eggs you can even have fertilized. So this saying like, oh, we still have, some like this short time frame, which Michelle just very much, broke down why it really isn't an adequate time frame for anyone, for the majority of folks. But you also have how the personhood clause within this own bill is going to completely like restrict and change the landscape of folks who have fertility issues. So you have those two parts of the bill. You have the ban, but you also have this personhood clause that does something else in the world of reproductive justice, which is restrict or complicate and creates these ethical questions around, how many eggs it's going to be okay to fertilize, to see how many are viable, to see how many, will actually be able to go forward in trying to get pregnant around. So that's why this is just really just like a heartbreaking situation, because it kind of presents itself as like protecting life and putting something in place that needs to be in place, but it's impacting what we've all of us, not just women, but folks who are capable of birth and also their families and communities, what we've all really relied upon to maintain like our bodily autonomy and also just protect our futures, get the health care that we need.
Well, thank you for that. No, that's really good. And I'm wondering, because you kind of touched on a little bit, like, what are some of the consequences we are going to see because of this bill, and who is it going to impact the most?
I mean, it impacts people without money and resource. I mean, just to name it plain, because it's like now, if you want an abortion beyond 6 weeks, you'll have to travel to one of our neighboring states like North Carolina or Florida. I'm very thankful that we have an abortion fund, ARC Southeast, for folks who are not familiar, to provide fund and resources to people who need to get abortion care. But you have to imagine that's like travel money. It depending on your situation, that's child care. You have to be able to afford the ability to take off from work in order to do that. And while some employers roll out protections that are like, we'll cover pay for that, some employers don't. So that means that you're also like losing wages. And we just don't know how that deeply impacts folks in terms of their livelihoods outside of this, this space and time. So I think about that in terms of the implications. I think to Kai's point earlier around like what it means for providers and the level of care that they're giving for folks. I believe in HB 481, it talks about when there's a provision for like if it's like poses a threat to the life of the mother or the host. And I think in that protection of it, though, it still leaves up to question like who determines that. And I think that's what we're also seeing too happening across the country, is that now, what was it? I think is it Indiana? Was it Indiana that had the case of the doctor who gave an abortion to the 10-year-old?
I think that was Ohio.
No, like it happened in Ohio, but she crossed state lines.
Oh.
And like the essay happened in Ohio. She crossed state lines to get an abortion, and now they're under investigation to determine if like that person or the doctor reported it correctly, if it was actually necessary, like all of these kind of things. And I think that that's the same kind of implications that we're going to have here in terms of like in the moments where it is, deemed medically necessary by your doctor, what is the role of the state in which they're going to try to come in and try to be hyper vigilant or police what that determination is.
Just really quick, it's very interesting to me because I was watching this. I love TikTok, always on TikTok, and there was a couple of politicians who were I guess questioning abortion providers, and I just found it so interesting because it's like, y'all are not doctors, and you're making these bills and you're writing these laws or whatever, enforcing them, and you don't have the background to be like to know about it, to be educated on it. So it's very interesting to me because I'm wondering who's leading that in Ohio and Indiana. I don't think I've seen, like, of course, like, you know, publications will like send me an email and I may like read it a little bit, but I would be interested to find out who's leading the charge on this and if they have any background in providing abortion care or reproductive care.
It's the attorney generals.
Oh.
Yeah, so
No.
like it's the attorney general.
Okay. So
for
no.
the state.
We don't. All right.
Yeah, I can tell you now, it's the attorney generals, and they are not like folks who have that.
Yeah.
But hold on, we got a question from the chat.
Can someone touch on what protections are given to the providers in regards to the new executive order? That's good.
I know, I'm looking at you, Kai. I'm like,
yeah, I don't have the executive order in front of me. It because I haven't engaged with it recently, I can't say like verbatim what's in there. So maybe that's something that we can like circle back to. But I do remember seeing some protections outlined. And that was why the executive order was so impactful and important, because it identified and articulated some of these very much hair-raising issues that folks were saying, you know, is this real life? Like, we all know that this is going to impact more than what is being called or talked about by the Supreme Court and in some of these state bills, is like this very like specific, like closed off kind of like healthcare access. But I think that what we've said on the call is still going to be the case, because like doctors are people. Not all doctors who say refer their patients out to abortion providers or anything like that, not those doctors, right, as well as abortion providers, are going to be in this like chain of command, in this string of like who makes the call of how to like help folks access this care. And so you'll see that we're not just talking about abortion providers and physicians. We're talking about pharmacists. We're talking about nurses. We're talking about doctors that refer people out. Doctors are people. They may not have any political position on this issue, right? All they know is that some folks out here are not going to be operating with maybe this idea of the patient is, I'm going to do everything I can to help this patient and I'll deal with the consequences later. So I think that we have already been seeing in the country, and that we'll definitely continue to see, where people are going to be grappling with these very human issues of who is enforcing this. It's very vague. We don't know. It's very early, and not being involved, and who is the most vulnerable and harmed the most in that kind of situation. A person whose healthcare, their future, their like life is on the line, and that'll be the patient. So it's that hypervigilance that Michelle was just talking about is not, it's not going to go away, even though the executive order did say some reassuring things, because we've yet to see across the country how this is playing out in the states, how police are getting involved, and you know, it's a very tense time.
Yeah, like, no, I agree. And I think like what we're also going to see too is like a clash between states' rights and like the federal executive order. Because the thing is that like the executive order on its face like protects like doctors who provide emergency care to people in need, and that's why it covers abortion care in that regard. But however, you have states like right now, like with the Indiana situation, they're investigating if it was lawful for them to have like even transfer the patients. So like to Kai's point, it's like an entire network of your healthcare providers. Like, was the doctor in Ohio correct for transporting this person or this child over to Indiana to get an abortion? Was that person doing what was like lawful, stuff like that? We still deal with like government oversight in terms of trying to determine if someone's life is at risk, right? So like, I think the only difference is that you have the executive order, which tells us on a federal level that like federally you won't be prosecuted, but I don't know what that means for the state. So I say that to say that like with the question about what protections are there, the protections are there on a federal level, but with the state it gets a little bit murky in terms of like what that looks like and how the executive order plays into that.
And I know you guys mentioned this a couple of times, but like fetal personhood, I would love for someone to touch on like what does that mean exactly, and how can we see this impact like tax laws and like personal dynamics? Like I'm interested to know what that means in the future with fetal personhood.
I mean, it's a person. That's what I think. That's really where it is. It's like it's a person. So if you're pregnant at 6.5 weeks and they can detect cardiac activity, you are now considered two people. So like if we were running a census, you're two people. If you filing your taxes and you're 6 weeks pregnant, you're two people. You're providing for a child. Like there's a child in your house. You can file for child support of theoretically underneath this bill. Like there's just so much that you can do in terms of like the coverage of it. And that's what I mean by the tax code, because again, like this is something that like no, like to Kai's point, no other state has done this in terms of the personhood stuff. We don't know how far it will stretch. I mean, I anticipate that there might be some more legislation that comes out of this next session to really like fine tune or redefine or like really focus in on what's going on. But yeah, it's interesting. But yeah, like the personhood thing, it's just that like the embryo is now deemed a person, and that means that they have certain protections under law. So that means like when we start talking about the ideas of like around like miscarriage, like when people are putting pregnant people in harm's way, like also the implications that you're also putting a child in harm's way. Like there's a whole host of implications that come with the personhood, but that person now has all the same rights as like that embryo has all the same rights as any other person like that's been born.
Yeah, and the only thing like I would maybe add to like build out this like what does that mean is like every word in the law, like in the piece of legislation, should mean something. And that's how you see some like bills go before kind of be brought in for more scrutiny because there may be something in the bill that isn't protected, and the bill saying these cells are protected as people, say before HB 481 was passed. That is in direct contradiction with constitutional law. That before this bill was passed, there was no way to create these protections because it just was not true that an unborn cluster of cells or group of cells were considered a person. So now, like Michelle said, everywhere that person shows up in Georgia code, the word person, that is applied to the unborn. That is applied to cells with cardiac activity. And honestly, it's still vague. It's not. We're not sure if that's cells with cardiac activity or just like now in the personhood clause in the bill says embryos and fetuses at any stage. So there is a like a cap on. There's a 6-week ban on abortion, but as far as personhood is concerned, it's embryos and fetuses at any stage. Yeah, so if it says like if a person walks across the street, jaywalks, like that's against the law. That goes for this unborn. Like anywhere person shows up in the law, that is applied in this case now too.
And this is a lot because what went through my head was like safety net programs. So now if someone is pregnant, they can increase their limit or whatever because there's two people now. They have a child to look after. And like what does that look like? And so I'm interested in knowing like, I guess between now and next legislative session, or just in general, do you guys think we're going to see like some like bills or like amendments that are going to like try to fine tune this to make it more specific? Because I'm thinking in my head now, this is going to cost the state even more money when we're thinking about um I mean, not child support. That's not going to cost people more money, but I guess it is because you got to go to court. So child support and safety net programs, and even like maybe even insurance policies now, and things like that. So I'm wondering, are we going to see people like take back these like take back stuff, or are we going to see people like fine tune things?
I think fine tuning it, because a lot of the thing is that like a lot of it's vague, and it's also based on things that are just not factually correct. So like Georgia has a lot of work to do to like really figure out like how much of a person they're trying to deem this cluster of cells. Like, and I mean, and I say that because technically, federally, nationally, nobody has this on the books. So this just directly impacts like state stuff. So like if you're filing your taxes, the question now becomes, do you file your federal one with federal guidelines and then file your state with the state guidelines, right? Like there's like other kind of implications that are there that they have to kind of like tussle out with. And I think also too, it's like once they figure out what's that sweet spot, then they can go forth and like make those policy recommendations to fine tune what this looks like or what they really meant by it. I think that I don't know what to predict in terms of like what they're thinking, because I swear every legislative session is like another curveball. But I do feel like something will come out that is more of like a fetal personhood bill, which has happened before. Like we have had fetal personhood before in a bill that was much more like had much more exposition on it than this clause that's only in HB 481. But HB 481 was like came out during a time when there was like a big boom of like anti-abortion bills all across the nation. And what we find is that like this is kind of like them testing the waters to see what can pass there, and then they try to pass similar bills elsewhere. So I also too am worried about, on a larger network of it, is that like what other states are going to try to follow Georgia in terms of like the fetal personhood, and if that's the next step for people who are anti-abortion.
And just a quick follow-up, do you guys think we would get to a space, of course this is all like, this is kind of hypothetical, but do you think we would get to a flat out abortion ban in the state of Georgia, considering what this new bill like contains? Do you think we would get to that space?
I think what's really like concerning about this new bill that we could say for a lot of these like questions about the future is that it definitely like opens the door for some of the scarier things that we have been gearing up for and preparing for. And I say scarier, but also just some, just the things that folks have been wanting to introduce and bring on the floor of the House and the Senate and debate, but didn't have any foothold in order to do that. So to your question about like an all-out, abortion ban, Zoe, possibly this gets to like an issue of preemption, like this federal law prohibit an all-out abortion ban like in the states. Well, since the Dobbs decision, and now with like lower court appeals courts upholding legislation like this in Georgia, Georgia's just going to do, and other states are just going to do what they've been doing. Right? Georgia's going to do what it did in 2019. It's going to introduce more severe legislation in whichever way the political will is like influencing it to go. And so that it could just come down to, will there be a push for that from advocates who want to see something like that, and will lawmakers then respond to that? I think also on the piece about personhood and how this is going to affect other areas of the law. Like Michelle said, like this is going to just be a call for more debate, more discussion about what is actually meant here. But a space that we all need to be watching is that, you know, like folks, I feel like there is a possibility for debate to come. You know, we have to, if we want to see debate around the tax code, around welfare and benefits, that's something that we need to be talking about and push for, because there might be opposition that will be, and when I say opposition, I mean a different opinions and different political leanings. But there may be some sentiment out there that will want a pregnant person who may have consumed something that could, you know, not be harmful to them, but could be harmful to the fetus. A pregnant person who may have, you know, been participating in a sport, you know, which is not necessarily just any kind of conduct and behavior in order to say, you know, let's, you know, push to say this could be seen as being reckless or negligent, because they are putting another person, you know, in harm's way by living their life and moving how they move and doing what they do. So if we want to see this conversation about personhood come up around taxes, around, you know, benefits, and around more resources, then that's something we have to talk about, because there will be folks out there that will, you know, are you able to incarcerate a pregnant person because you'll be incarcerating two people, you know, and a person that may not have done anything? We want to have those kind of sticky conversations, because I feel like we might see more of a push of folks that want to see how we can create like more criminal code around a person's behavior being intrinsically criminalized because of this idea of personhood.
We have another question, and thank you for that, because they literally just like put off so many light bulbs. Because I was just thinking personally, like, what if one day a pregnant person is driving without insurance and they didn't know they didn't have insurance, and now they're locked up for driving without insurance, but also could that be reckless endangerment because they are pregnant? So that opens up a lot of different questions. And like you said, what if someone is incarcerated while pregnant? Is that fair? Because now you're incarcerating a person who didn't do anything. That's very interesting. And the question that we have in the chat is, can federal Medicaid expansion supersede state Medicaid policies, or do you believe it will create for more inaccessibilities and restrictions?
So the answer is no. Because Georgia still has not expanded Medicaid through the Affordable Care Act. So we're literally leaving millions of dollars every year out there. We have had hospitals close across the state because we don't adequately fund folks with this money that's definitely just sitting there. And so it creates this like healthcare wage gap here in Georgia, which I think last I checked, this was before pandemic numbers, like 1 in 8 Georgians didn't have access to healthcare because they don't meet that threshold. Whereas, and that disparity grows larger. I think for Black Georgians, it's like 1 in 5. So it's definitely very inaccessible. It definitely proposes more restrictions. I think the thing about Medicaid, though, however, is that while some of it's used for like emergency abortion, because of the Hyde Amendment, you could not necessarily just go and get an abortion using Medicaid. Like, so like I just wanted to name that because there is some like misunderstanding or discrepancies there, is that Medicaid will cover abortion in the sense that like if it's opposed to your risk of your life or stuff like that. But if you like autonomously just say, I just need an abortion, it does not cover those. So it's more inaccessibility. Like healthcare, the state of healthcare in Georgia overall is a bit inaccessible. And that's another fight that like we've really been pushing on here, especially at Women Engage, is this need to expand healthcare in the state of Georgia, because it's literally just money that's just sitting there that's allocated to the state every year. But every year the state legislature chooses not to buy into it or like, to adopt that expansion to Affordable Care Act. And that's deeply rooted in some anti-Black stuff because of the way in which people have like associated Obamacare and Obama with the policy and stuff like that. But yeah, so in short, it unfortunately does not supersede state policies, and we got a lot of work to do in Georgia.
and I love that you touched on that, because it literally made me think of like, if like what does impacting the pregnant person's life really mean? Because of course it could have physical damage to the body, but also like bills. Having a baby is expensive as hell. And then you think about you having to take leave because you can't work. I remember I was at my first job. This pregnant woman started working at my job because she couldn't afford not to work. And I would try to like help her and like do certain tasks because she literally would get winded from just, sweeping and mopping because she's literally carrying a child. So it was like I'm wondering what that looks like, and who can really say that it will impact or endanger the pregnant person's life, because it's not even just physical, it's mental, it's emotional, it's also like financial, because having a baby, like I said, is very expensive. So that's definitely interesting to me. And thank you for touching on that. And I'm also wondering, let's see, like with the fetal personhood, how do you guys think that other states will copy this? And like the states that surround us, like southern states or maybe even the Midwest, do you think that's something that we could see in other states?
Well, I can't remember what other states are in the 11th Circuit, but because this was an 11th Circuit appeals court, like, this is precedent now. So, doing a quick Google on what other states are in the 11th Circuit, those states arguably could do exactly what Georgia did if that legislation was, sued, say like by an ACLU or something like that. They have this decision to go, oh well, the 11th Circuit has already said that, there's nothing unconstitutional about a personhood clause. And circuits tend to I apologize. Was this in the 11th Circuit Appeals Court of the state of Georgia? That it was a state court. So yeah, no, forget everything I just said. This wasn't a federal circuit court. This was a state court. But I will say that state court decisions are sometimes decisions that other state courts will look at how they reasoned and how they came to the conclusion they made, and they can still use a state with a similar constitution, for example, to then, like use that same reasoning. And so it really does. But I think it will come down to where that legislation is passed and how the makeup of the constitutions of those states and the makeup of the courts in those states.
Gotcha. Michelle, did you have anything to add to that? No? Okay. And honestly, just I guess because I definitely want to get into the self-care portion. And definitely we have to touch on the aftermath of Roe v. Wade in our next episode. But I'm wondering, this is kind of like a two-parter. So my first part is like next steps. What should we have our ear to the ground for? Like, what are we looking for? What are we, just like trying to look and kind of see what's going to happen next, and how can people join in on this fight to protect reproductive rights and reproductive justice. So that's the two-parter. Like, what are next steps? What do we have to look out for? What should we be on the like fence on? Like, what are we looking out for? And then the second part is, how can we join in and help fight these bills?
Yeah, first things first is make sure that we show some love to our independent clinics. Shout out to Feminist Women's Health Center, who for the longest has been providing abortion care to folks in Georgia and also folks from out of the state. It's really important, especially now that when these kind of things happen, that we continue to show support by either, if you have the ability to seek care, like getting your other reproductive health care needs met through Feminist Women's Health Center, whether it's donating, volunteering, things of that nature, it's really going to be helpful because a lot of independent clinics are faced with really tough decisions now, especially as we start talking about the outlawing of abortion. So that's the first thing that I always will name is that just support independent clinics when you can. You can also check out, they had a really great live stream yesterday that I tuned in for on their Instagram. So I would definitely say check that out for more information. And then also to continuing to support abortion funds. No need to recreate the wheel. There are already abortion funds here that are already doing the work of funding people to get them abortions. They're trained. I trust them. You should trust them too. Amazing network of folks. And so I say volunteer, get involved with them as well. And then last but not least is, of course, getting involved with organizations like ours. There's a lot of room and opportunities for us to really continue to combat this. I know today was oh my goodness, let's talk about the implications, but there's a lot of things that are on the horizon that can really get us out of this. The first thing, of course, is the Reproductive Freedom Act, which is a reproductive justice big bill, a big reproductive justice big bill that we've been working on since 2019 with other partners and coalition to really, not only codify abortion care, but continue to expand and increase access to comprehensive healthcare services that really help improve the quality of life for all folks involved. Best way to get involved with that is to sign up on our website. You can check that out. And also to contact your legislators. They may not know the name of the bill just yet because we're planning to introduce it next session, but you can start telling them about how, you need to stand for this bill and do things of that nature. And then, of course, yes, I'm going to pull this in. Oh, no, it went away. Okay, we're back. Learning about the candidates running in your area this fall. Organize your friends and get them registered to vote. Exactly. And that's my next piece is that as we start talking about, what could possibly happen in the legislative session, things of that nature, the reality is that if we can really great elected officials who keep our interests in mind when it comes to expanding reproductive healthcare access, they can help block these bills. So if we ever got a governor that stands for reproductive justice, that would be really helpful in combating these bills. If we could change the way that the state legislature looks like, that also continues to help us in terms of rolling back some of these harmful things as well. But it does take us to start by, of course, making sure that we're registered to vote. So if you've moved, changed your name, or just haven't voted in a while or haven't checked it in a while, I suggest you do. Because even if you vote all the time, I will tell people personally that happened to me once. I had just voted, and a month later, they was trying to kick me off the voter rolls because they was we suspect that you don't live where you say you live, even though I was definitely still where I lived. So it's really important that you stay up to date with your voter registration information. And then, of course, that we're continuing to get out the vote in terms of and we talked a little bit about this last time, but it's not enough to just say, hey, go vote. But let's really talk about what we're voting for and why and what we're expecting with our vote. Am I saying it's going to be the perfect answer to everything? No, because there's still a lot of work that we need to do. Like I mentioned, supporting our independent clinics and our abortion funds. But voting is still a really great tool for us to continue to make sure our voices are heard. And there's already active efforts now that are working to make sure that our voices aren't heard. And honestly, is a part of the reason of how we're even getting into this position now. But that's a whole other topic about how we got here. But yeah, I think that those are some of the things that I would say in the immediate that people could do.
Yeah, everything Michelle just said is absolutely right. This is recorded, so anyone watching this with access to this, rewind that and watch that over as many times as you can, as you need. And I would add to that, talk to folks that you know and in your own communities, because we are combating stigma simultaneously as well. We are combating a big battle with misinformation and disinformation. And I think that bringing 10 people with you, sending what Michelle just said, rewinding that, listening to that and sending that to 10 people that you know, and continuing again to operate within those spaces that we are building power and mobilizing community, and knowing that each of us is a big piece of that as well in our own power and in our own right, that we all have the ability to write have these conversations to combat stigma. That without those conversations, is going to continue to be an issue, and that we have the ability to make sure that we are again building power in fighting for this.
Those are both wonderful answers. I really, really appreciated that. And of course, we will have another YAWA episode to kind of like talk about like the aftermath of Roe v. Wade, and maybe we could even get to how we got here. And that may be a little controversial, but we may, touch on that a little bit. But I'm interested. I want to save like the last few minutes or so to talk about how are you guys taking care of yourselves? Well, this is gonna be a two-parter too. How have you been taking care of yourselves? And the second part is, what is the one thing you are most looking forward to this weekend? Because I know working at a reproductive justice-based organization can be a little difficult in these times. So I would love to know how y'all are celebrating yourselves. And also drop in the comments how you guys are celebrating yourselves.
Well, I'll go first. I feel like I haven't been going first, so I'll take this one. A way that I am taking care of myself is definitely just taking care of the things that I have and just feeling a lot of gratitude. And so I find myself just definitely like doing what I can to remain present, and to just appreciate what I have. Keeping my home, in good shape, and just doing little things around the house that make me feel just like everything, outside these doors and these windows is definitely, can be pure chaos sometimes, but, just being grateful for the positive people we have in our life, and knowing like who we're in these fights with and who we share values with, and knowing like our home is a place that we can build ourselves up and then go out into the world, and feel like whole people is has been really impactful for me right now. And something I look forward to this weekend, I feel like I really love the rain. I feel like I just am enjoying the rain right now. Maybe it'll rain this weekend, and if it does, I'll definitely be, on the porch enjoying that.
OMG, yes, the porch. That's been my space lately. So like when I have the energy, I go outside, I sit on the porch. That's been like something that's been bringing me a lot of joy. And recently, I found my Game Boy Advance. So for folks who don't know, it's like a little handheld device. If you're, I don't know, I feel like I'm dating myself, but like a Game Boy Advance, imagine it. It's like 1999, but like, and so it came with like, we found my Pokemon Yellow game. So I've been playing Pokemon on the porch, which is interesting because, of course, this is back before Game Boy Advances were backlit. So, like, it's like using the sun to play the game. It's interesting. But I have a lot of fun, just reconnecting with like that inner child. I'm like, wow, this game, like I used to play so often. I'm like, oh my gosh. But it's definitely bringing me a lot of joy right now. And I don't know, something about being outside is just really nice and calming. And then in terms of this weekend, I'm excited to try to make some content. So I'm a gamer, of course, but I also like make a Sims drama show. And so I haven't made an episode in a minute. So I finally recorded some footage. And so I'm going to edit it this weekend. So I'm looking forward to like getting back into that. Cause like my friends have been like, so what's happening next on the episode? And it's just like all of my trashy drama, like drama filled whatnot going on. But I'm excited to get back into that and make some more episodes.
I freaking love that. I love both. I need to reconnect back with nature, and also Sims dramas, literally all in my watch later on YouTube. So I know they're in one place, so I can never lose them. I love it. Yes, I really love it. I know for me, I've been binge watching this show called The Boys. Literally insane. That show is so amazing, and it's so funny because like on my Twitter, people have been laughing at me because every day I tweet how creepy the main superhero is. He is the creepiest superhero you will ever see in your entire life. His name is Homelander. The show is amazing, top tier show, but that superhero, he gives me the EBGBs. And if you guys watch the show, then you will understand how creepy he is. That's how I've been taking care of myself. I binged all the way to season 3. Season 3 just came out, and I have to wait on my roommate because he doesn't want me to watch it without him. So I just been like waiting for him to like not be working so we could watch it together because I don't want to hear his mouth. So that's how I've been like taking care of myself. And what I'm looking forward to this weekend, I'm gonna go see Nope. And I'm so excited. I get all of my tickets in advance. I'm one of those people. So got my ticket for tomorrow at 7:00. Gonna go watch it. I literally have merch on the way. They had limited time merch. I don't know if it's gonna get here by tomorrow, but I'm definitely gonna wear it when it does. And I'm so excited. So that's how I'm like, I love the movies. I literally go to the movies. I want to say like every 2 to 3 weeks. I love the movies. So that's how I'm taking care of myself this weekend. Um, but I just want to say thank you guys. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Kai, for joining us today on this episode of YAWA. Did you guys have any? Oh, I guess not. No, I just wondering, do you guys have anything else that you would like to say before we say our goodbyes? No?
I didn't really have anything. You know, it's always great to be here. If folks have questions or more questions coming up, just let us know. We'll answer them in a couple weeks.
Yes, awesome. Alrighty, you guys. I just want to go ahead and go back into like the organizational updates really quick, and then I'll let you all enjoy the rest of your Thursday. But of course, if you're interested in volunteering, please visit our website, www.womenengage.org. And you can also find a link there to make sure you are registered to vote and also to check your voter registration. And we are also hiring for 4 positions: the senior manager movement building position, the digital communications specialist, executive assistant, and voter engagement database coordinator. NRG Consulting Group is taking the lead on this search. So if you have any questions, please reach out to them directly, jobs@nrgconsultinggroup.org. Thank you guys for joining us on this episode of YAWA, and I will see you soon in a couple of weeks. Bye.